and welcome to Cosplay Stitch and Seam. I'm Pennant.
And I am Mercedes, aka Vermilion Fire.
And as usual, you can catch us at cosplaystitchandseam.com, where you can check out articles and different things that might interest you about the cosplay community.
And you can also send us your cosplay horror stories or questions, or say hi at cosplaystitchandseam@gmail.com, or you can fill out the form on the website if you want to feel fancy.
Hooray! So we're actually really excited this week because we got so much feedback from a lot of you just on our Facebook, because this week we're talking about kind of like a cosplay competition 101. This week we're going to talk about how to get ready beforehand, what to do when you're in judging, what kind of documentation you should prepare, things like that. And a lot of the points of focus from this episode come from suggestions from you guys. So if you want to make your voice heard, or if there's something you want us to cover, make sure you, again, email us or check us out online.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we both asked questions on our pages about like what you wanted to know about cosplay contests and how to prepare for them. And so, I don't know, this is very, gonna go over a lot in this 101, and later on we're hoping to go more in depth with each subject and whatnot, because cosplay contests can be very
intimidating.
Yes.
Scary,
intimidating, frightening. The first thing my friend decided to throw me in on.
Yes. So like a big thing we wanted to do is kind of demystify it, because a lot of people have stayed out of contests just because they're like, oh, I don't know, is my stuff good enough? I don't know what to do on stage. I don't know what the judges are going to do.
I also want to throw a disclaimer out there, because it's very interesting how many people will actually confuse us. Not a ton, but enough so that, like, I want to say this. Cosplay is for everyone.
Yes.
No matter what your skill level is, whether you buy your costume or build it yourself, cosplay is for everyone. Now, cosplay contests, on the other hand, well, in order to be a properly competitive contest, you have to, well, it has to have rules and things. So it feels sometimes to a lot of people that it feels not inclusive, but it is for usually craftsmanship and performance.
Yes.
And so it's going to feel a little different than just cosplaying with your friends.
Yeah, as a base, cosplay contests are going to be about skill. Now, whether that's skill in your performance, skill in your build, skill in how well you enact the character, different contests are going to focus on different things. So keep in mind that with the contests we're talking about here, it's mostly going to be about craftsmanship-based and performance-based contests, where they expect like a certain level of craft, certain level of things that you have built yourself, and also how you present yourself on stage and just stage presence, etc., etc.
And that's just the nature of competitions. We will be kind of veering a little bit away from anything that feels like a look-alike contest, because those ones are harder to give advice on.
Yeah, well, and if that sparks your interest, go for it. We definitely, our area of expertise is in the contest that we have competed in, which is going to be craftsmanship and performance-based. So that's what we're going to talk about.
And they're a lot of fun anyways.
In that vein, make sure when you're going to compete that you know what kind of contest you're getting into.
I think that's the biggest thing, and probably based on a lot of the questions that we got, one of the things before you go and compete somewhere is look over the rules of that contest.
Yes.
That will give you a big idea of what you're actually getting yourself into.
Absolutely. You may notice a lot of contests lately where there isn't even an option to do something like craftsmanship. And in that instance, just know that you're not going to be judged on the work in your costume. Similarly, if they aren't talking about stage and things like that, it's probably just a very heavily craftsmanship-based sort of competition. So just looking at the rules, you can kind of get an idea of what they are looking for in that contest.
Yeah. So a general trend, so not every contest is this way, but a general trend that I've seen, I've been collecting a lot of data from different contests from all across the US, and a general trend that I've seen so far, my research is incomplete, but what I've seen so far is that most contests will have craftsmanship judging before the contest itself, the big one that everybody sees, that you've probably seen if you've been to a convention. There's a behind the scenes where the cosplayers will sit down with craftsmanship judges and go over how they built their costume. And then they will have some time in between there where they can go and play and have fun, and then they go inside of a green room and then perform on stage. and then awards are after that. That's kind of like a really rough breakdown of what a general cosplay contest is like.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're going to cover in this episode. So, I mean, while contests are going to be all over the board and they're going to vary this, that, and the other, that's what we're focusing on, and so that's what we're going to cover
I'm very
here.
excited later on to look at different types. But yeah, that'll be the one that we'll talk about today. So first part...
So first things is definitely going to be, what do you do beforehand? I mean, you mentioned doing the online rules and things like that. A lot of contests are moving to an online-only form submission. So you're going to want to check with your contest, see when they open up submissions, see what you need when submissions open. Some of them require you to have your skit totally planned out. Some of them require you to have your costume done a month in advance because they want to see photos of what's going up on stage. It just... depends on
what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, exactly. So just know, first of all, when you're expected to have things finished and how to submit things online. If you ever need clarification, there's usually an email address for someone you can reach out and contact. Always hit them up before any major deadlines. If you're trying to hit someone up during or like after submissions have opened, they are probably going to be swamped with submission forms at the time, and they may or may not even get to your stuff with enough time for you to apply.
Earlier is better.
Yes, make sure you're doing it early.
By looking online at what the requirements and all that you are seeing, you can also determine how long you're going to be giving your time at the convention itself. Candace actually had a really good bit of advice on my Facebook post. She said, "I wish I had known the level of commitment it was going to be for your con experience. I know this varies from con to con, so it's best to ask people who've competed at that con before." That's actually a really good bit of advice to ask.
Yeah, I actually had several people comment that they wish they had known how long of a time investment competing is. Like, for me, if I'm competing in a contest, I plan to spend probably my entire day that the contest is happening just focused on contest stuff. Because between doing your craftsmanship judging, and some cons do like a stage rehearsal, or if you just want to practice on your own with your group or by yourself.
A lot of times you're probably going to lose whatever day the contest is on to the contest.
Yeah, exactly. And then you usually have to report to like a green room or a backstaging area at least an hour before the contest itself. A lot of performance, if you've done theatrical stuff, so much of it is hurry up and wait. You have to hurry, you make sure you're there on time and ready, but then you have a lot of waiting. So yeah, recap that, just knowing how much time you're putting in, knowing when signups are, knowing what's expected from the contest.
And like Candace said, you can ask previous people who have competed there, and then well as looking it up online and asking the people who are running the contest.
So that's kind of what I would suggest having ready beforehand. If you're planning to do any kind of craftsmanship, make sure you're taking photos of what you're working on and like major completion points in your build. I like to cover with photos stuff that the judges may not be able to see when they're judging up close, so things that are on the inside, on your linings.
Maybe you have a vest that's underneath a jacket that you fully built, but you don't want to actually take your jacket off in front of the judges.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably something that you probably could take off and then still show, but maybe you've got a ton of belts that are going over the top of that and it's just going to take too much time.
Or
so having photos of the underneath and the insides or stuff that the judges aren't going to be able to see easily.
Yeah. Or just like major completion points, because a lot of times you'll have something that's a fairly complex build and you'll only have like a picture of it finished, and it's like, well, I need to be able to see that you were working on it somewhere in a midpoint. It's just proof that the judges know that you were working on it and didn't just order it and get it all pretty and finished.
Yeah.
I mean, most judges will be able to tell if something is handmade versus something that was ordered from somewhere or commissioned.
Yeah. Brittany actually commented, she said, "I would have liked to have known how to assemble portfolio," meaning the documentation, to show the judges. And actually, I'd still like to know how to do that. But what do judges look for in a portfolio, do's and don'ts, etc.?
Yeah, I had like so many questions about the documentation. We had people asking like what it should be comprised of, what they should talk about, what they should leave out.
My biggest thing for this is where I really, really like it when contests will announce who their craftsmanship judges are before the contest, before the signups even, because then you can look at who they are and you can start kind of getting an idea of what they look for. Because like if you look at, say, well, myself, if you saw that I was going to go and judge somewhere, you would see that I do a lot of leatherworking and I like very realistic looking things. And so when you start putting your portfolio together, you might try and cater towards, oh, did I use a realistic method for this? Did I use a historical thing? You know, things that I would find interesting. Because those are definitely things that I like to look for.
Yeah. Well, and that's not to say that you need to specifically cater your performance or craftsmanship to a judge.
You still need to show what you did. Don't fudge it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I made a few notes on what I like to see as documentation or things that are good to keep in mind for documentation. The biggest thing I see is like keep it short. I know the builds took you a really long time and I know there are so many points to talk about, but in the, many contests I've judged, not all of them give us time to look at those portfolios outside of the little 5-10 minute window we get when we're actually there judging you. So I try to keep, when I'm doing it, try to keep it as concise as possible so that the judges have time to look through everything during the time I'm there. If your portfolio is something that is more than what they could feasibly flip through in a couple of minutes, then it's probably too long.
Yeah. A lot of contests will actually limit how many even pictures you can submit. They'll sometimes do, only 5 pages, or they'll be like, you only get 5 pictures and that's it. Those ones scare me because it's like, what do I show?
As a judge, I like to see the things that you were particularly passionate about and things that maybe required you to like go a step above and beyond that you may not be able to see just by looking at the costume.
Definitely show the things that you are most proud of.
Definitely. So like if you, like I've seen some behind the scenes of someone like dyeing all the different colors into their silks, or somebody doing like carving out their foam pieces and dremeling them to specific shapes and things like that. Or if they took time to, do some intense hand embroidery and then they lined everything. So I can't see how clean and nice and tidy they made the back of their embroidery, but there's a picture in their book that shows me. Those are all things I appreciate. There's no like one right or wrong way to do your documentation, but I would definitely say be as succinct as you can. Make sure it's something that they can flip through easily. Make sure, like, I love it when there's a portfolio that is memorable. You don't always have to go out of your way to make it, like, put it in a fancy box or a binder and put like little frames on every page or anything like that, but like just making sure that it's neat, that it's easy to read. If you have giant blocks of text, the judges probably aren't going to have time to read it.
I used to write novels.
And I know, and it's so like as a judge you feel so bad when you don't have time to like thoroughly peruse them, but just given the time constraints, I'd say in more than half the contests, I'm not given time outside of just the judging window that I see them in to go ahead and review those.
I always try, again, I write novels, for my documentation. I try to keep them around 5 pages. Sometimes it goes a little bit over that, but I only allow that if I'm like trying to make a picture bigger so they can see a certain detail really well. And I'm very choosy. I always try and also put in photos that show a process.
Yes.
Like, this is a really simple example, but it's like, here's a block of wood. Here's the block of wood cut in the shape of a sword now. And here it is, sanded down and beginning the painting on it. I'll try and show multiple steps within one photo even.
Yeah. And those are great because you don't honestly need many words with it because the photos show, they paint the picture.
A photo is worth 1,000 words.
It really is in this case.
Yeah. I've stopped writing huge paragraphs and I just do keywords like weathering. Or next to weathering, it'll say weathering and, I don't know, coffee grounds. Like if I use coffee to add weathering into it or something. And then like if the judges see that and if they have questions, they'll ask coffee grounds and I'll be like, oh yeah, I did this thing. I have not done that actually. I should try that. Yeah.
Coffee grounds?
Yes, I usually just use markers for weathering.
You'll smell great all day.
I would probably smell better than markers.
But yeah.
Now, on the note of judging, I actually really like this comment from Cassini Closet. or this question is, how do judges compare and contrast craftsmanship skills? So as you're preparing your documentation and working on your stuff, sometimes you might even ask yourself this. So going back to Cassini's questions, she says, for example, if two people cosplay the same character, but one sculpted, embroidered by hand, and used no LEDs, while the other programmed a 3D printer, patterned an embroidery machine to sew, and coded LEDs with their phone, does it jump to time spent on the cosplay to be a larger factor? So my opinion on that is that it doesn't matter what skills you use so long as you do them well.
Mm-hmm.
Because someone can come up to me with stuff where they put in a lot of different skill sets, but they're still, like, you look at it and you're like, this is kind of...
messy and learning and...
Yeah, you're still learning it. They're great, impressive skills. For example, when I first started cosplaying, I learned about French seams.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that is cool. Now, French seam is just a really cool seam you can put in clothing. It is not used for everything, but I used it for everything. And I found out slowly why you don't use a French seam on everything. It's a really thick seam, and it doesn't really...
It's not for everything.
Yeah, it's not for everything. So there's sometimes where you might use a skill where you think it's really, really cool, but maybe you shouldn't have.
Mm-hmm.
But that comes through experience. And sometimes, and I love it when people do try to use things in ways that we didn't expect them to, it does work.
Mm-hmm.
And you surprise yourself. But that's going to come through experience and doing more and more stuff as you go.
I think if you're comparing two things where people are using completely different skill sets for the same build, what it is going to come down to is a lot of people will tell me how much time they put into their costume. And honestly, I care a lot less about how many hours went into the costume than I care about how good the final result is.
That was actually another question that I had. It was on time.
Because, well, the thing is, as a beginner, it's going to take you a lot longer. It is going to take you much longer to do something that a skilled craftsperson could do in maybe a handful of hours. And that's not to say the final result wouldn't be fairly balanced, but the number of hours does not tell me how good the finished product is.
Yes.
I mean, I appreciate hearing it because it tells me how dedicated you were to your build, and that's a really cool thing, but it isn't necessarily an indicator of skill level. When you come down to using, like, different skill sets for the same build, like Cassini was asking, it's going to come down to how cleanly executed those skills are. So you may have used a wide variety, like Mercedes was saying, but if they are messy, if they haven't had like proper finishing, if you didn't sand things so that they're smooth, if you have seams that aren't finished, if you maybe were trying a new applique technique and your stitches all over the place, it's going to be a different score, more depending on that than it is depending on how much time you put in. Makes sense. Sorry, that was a long ramble.
Sense. No, I think that makes sense. Cleanliness is more important than how complicated that skill is. Now, that doesn't mean don't do the complicated things. Do them.
Please
do them. But you're only going to get better the more you do them. And at most, like, you can get advice from the judges afterwards if you go and ask them.
Yeah, I think I had a comment on that. I'm just trying to scroll.
Well, while you scroll and find your comment,
yes.
And on the subject of time, I have never been not impressed by any amount of time put on onto anything. Like, I saw this guy who built like this massive Tauren at Denver Comic-Con, and he spent like years working on that thing.
Totally.
Where I put together something in a month, and they were both still really impressive, and then judges were impressed by both amounts of time.
Yes.
So I don't think time matters so much, because no matter, like, if you come up and be like, I built this in a week, I'll be like, oh wow, that's so cool. Or if you come up and you said, I've been working on this for 2 years, I'm gonna be like, oh wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, exactly.
It's equivalent to me.
Yeah.
You spent time on this, and I love it. They have
different values, and the end result can be very varied. One of the comments I got from Renegade Cosplay is that I wish I had known the importance of cleanliness versus complexity. And that kind of goes with what we were just saying, where like I love to see a very cleanly made costume where it fits well. You know, you're not going to see fraying anywhere. Your prop is very cleanly, when we say clean, I mean like it's sanded, it looks smooth, it looks like whatever texture the original canon means it to be. Like if you're making Captain America's shield and it's foam, I shouldn't be able to look at it and see that it's foam. It should look like what is it, adamantium.
this fake material. Make it look like fake material.
Make it look like fake metal.
Imaginary metal.
Vibranium. I'm sorry. I was too many superhero movies recently. But yeah, it should look like the canon source material. So like if you're making the master sword, it should look like it's made of metal and the handle should look like it's made of some mythical plastic that doesn't exist.
And don't feel bad if you like finish and it's not quite hitting it there. You are your own worst critic.
Right.
Do not ever forget that.
Right.
Also, I want to keep us moving along because I think we've covered that one.
No, I could talk about this for an hour.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of what we expect with documentation. We talked a little bit about what the judging is like. Did you want to go into that? Like what the judges are looking at and like how to prep going into judging?
Yeah, Ashley Sudweeks actually said, I wish I knew just how close the judges would look. Scared me silly when they started checking if my seams were finished on the inside. A good judge, yes, will check and make sure your seams are finished on the inside.
I will say I, for one, really appreciate when a judge is going to get up and look at my stuff up close. Because unless they are turning your seams, unless they are looking at your prop very close, they are not going to be able to tell how nice it is. It's kind of like the difference between looking at a thumbnail photo and a high res.
Yeah.
Like, you can look at a thumbnail and it looks so good in the thumbnail and everything looks like that character, and then you get up into the high res and you're like, oh, that's fraying. Oh, that is not smooth.
Well, there was one time at a convention, I was walking around, and from like 100 feet away, I don't know, it was down a hallway, it probably wasn't 100 feet, I don't know. I was looking down a hallway and I saw this amazing looking Keyblade from the Kingdom Hearts series, and I was like, oh my gosh, that looks so cool, and like from far away it looks super 3D, and all this stuff, and I like ran up to them, and it was completely flat. It was a killer. It was the most amazing paint job I had ever seen, but it was a flat, just cut out of a thing, and I loved it. I loved it. The paint job was amazing. The point that it like tricked me from so far away, I was just like, I love this, and I was like, man, if you just like keep going with this work, like don't, like I don't know, I wanted to steal the Keyblade.
Yeah. But like, basically the point we're making is that the judges need to get up close to be able to see if your work is properly finished, if it looks clean from far away in the distance and it looks nice up close. Like if you're just looking at something from on stage or from like halfway across a room, you're not going to be able to tell.
Yeah. And vice versa too. Some things from far away might not look as good as they do up close.
True.
And that's why a lot of times, like after a contest, people will be like, well, I think this should have won. It's like, you weren't there in judging though.
Yeah.
You didn't get to see it up close and see what actually was put into these. You didn't get to see these competitors pour out their heart and soul to the judges,
right,
telling them what they put into this.
And you may, like, if I'm presenting awards and you hear me say something like, I wish you could see this up close, that is definitely one of those times where they have put in some kind of extra detail. They have taken the time to make their thing look flawless, to a point that, like, it's not something you'd notice from far away, but seeing it up close is just really stunning. I always appreciate when judges take the time to look up close, and if they don't, I tend to get up in their face and show them how nice it is up close. So,
look how good your stuff is.
Look how good, yeah. So, anything else you want to say about judging?
I think that's it about judging on my questions.
Okay. I just want to say a couple things about, it kind of goes in with the beforehand preparedness, but make sure that you know when your judging time slot is, and also that you are prepared in advance if it's the first time you're putting on that costume. Make sure you give yourself enough time to get into it. Yes.
Sergeant Calhoun. I put on at the judging place.
Oh my.
Like 5 minutes before I had to go judge. Actually, okay. And the Wanderer. That was 15 minutes. I told myself 15 minutes beforehand I had to stop what I was doing and go into judging. And I did. I went in with only wearing half of it, because remember I was like handing out my pieces of the costume? Because I didn't get it all on time.
So, if you can, put on the costume before the con.
I know
that is a rule nobody is going to follow me on.
But that's advice out there.
But
you can say you'll take it, you probably won't actually do it, but try.
If you're gonna go V-Fire's route, make sure, like, set yourself up a time in advance of your time slot. Say, like, I've never put this costume on before. I'm going to give myself 3 hours before the contest, so that's time for me to put it on, to do all my makeup, to make sure everything fits, to have someone help me pin it in places that aren't working. You know,
I actually highly suggest doing it the week before, because then if anything breaks, You have time to fix it.
That's great.
It's great advice. It is great advice. I never follow it.
So, just making sure you have time to at least put your costume on, and you want it to be looking as nice as possible for the judges. So, as nice as it can be to have a shoot before you go in, you want your judges to see that costume looking the freshest, looking the nicest, looking the most polished. So, yes.
Oh, that's another thing on documentation. Have a reference picture in there. You don't need to have a final photo of you with the finished product on, unless the contest asks for it.
Yes.
But have a reference image of what your character is. I like anime. I love video games.
Sure.
I don't know every character thing out there.
Mm-hmm.
And no judge will, unless they're crazy. But no judge is going to know every single thing out there. So that's one of the biggest, like, if you're going to have anything in your documentation, have that.
Yeah.
Because then they know what they're looking at.
Make sure you have a reference photo. Make sure you have, like, the important thing with the progress documentation is that it needs to achieve, basically, it needs to tell the judges what you're doing. It needs to tell them what you've done. So if you don't have a reference, they don't know what you're trying to make. They don't know what you were trying so hard to match. And if you don't have progress pictures, they can't always tell how much work has gone into it. Mm-hmm. So, good point. We definitely should have covered that.
Yes. Well, we threw it in there. There it is.
Good. So yeah, making sure you prep ahead of time to go into judging as much as possible. If you do run late, make sure you're contacting the contest. Not everyone allows for you to be late, and that can be, super disappointing when you've done all this work ahead of time, and then you get there and you didn't put your costume on in time, so you totally miss your judging slot.
Yeah. Don't expect the contest to be lenient. Some are, but not all are.
Right,
so.
Totally. And I find the bigger contest you get, the less lenient they are about that.
Yes.
So, and also to keep in mind with that, like, if you are late and the judges have to push things back for you, that can throw off their whole schedule and make it so, like, they don't have as much time to spend with other people. So just be considerate. The judges don't always know if you're the one who was late and threw a wrench in things. So just be considerate of your fellow competitors, be considerate of the people on staff, and also the judges, because the longer they are there, sometimes they can get cranky and hungry. So
hangry judges!
And you don't want to be the one judged by a hangry judge.
Also on that, I think the last thing for judging is time. Your time with the judges. Always, it's different for different competitions. I've noticed that most tend to go around 5 minutes. You get 5 minutes to present your costume. Some places give you more, some places give you less. I don't think less is great, but practice what you want to say beforehand. And again, the most important things you want to show off the things that you are most proud of. Show those first. Use that 5 minutes, that little bit of time that you have, wisely. And again, the contest should be able to put up on their website how long you're going to have. And keep it within that time. Mm-hmm. If the judges want to keep you for longer, they'll be the ones to decide that. Try not to go over your time. Because again, that'll mess up timing, because there's so many people they have to go through in a day.
Very true.
Yeah.
Should we move to green room?
Yes.
Green room. So, for those unfamiliar with cosplay contests, the green room is the same as the staging area. Basically, it's where you have to wait before you go on stage. Some places it'll be actually behind the stage, backstage. Sometimes it will be in a separate room, and then they'll have you go through a series of secret tunnels and get you onto the stage. But basically, it's where you wait before you go on stage.
It is the whole reason I love doing contests, because you get to be... hopefully it's not, like, crammed in a hallway in a scary place or anything like that, but mostly, like, you're in a room where you're just with all these other crafters, and you get to completely nerd out, and I just lose my head every time I go in there. I love talking with other people about how they made their stuff, what did they do, and they're all nervous, and for me, I'm nervous too, and the way that I fix that is by talking. And so, I apologize if you have ever met me behind stage in the green room and you're like, this crazy person would not shut up about what I made. But I want to know how you put your stuff together. And that's what I love most about the green room.
Yeah, for sure. I would say so many of the friends I made from cosplay, I made while in the green room, just nerding out about each other's costumes. Because, like,
it's the place you're supposed to go and sit and wait to go on stage and be nervous, but make friends.
And, I mean, you can use that time to sit there and mope and compare your costume to other people, or you can use it to make friends and learn different techniques and things and learn more about the people around you.
Learn about new anime or video games. Like, I've got a list of games that I got from a couple of contests going, I don't know what this is from, but you look amazing! How'd you make this? What is this game? What's going on? I love it.
The green room is just, like, the biggest concentration of highly talented nerds that you will find. Like, it's so sad to not take advantage of that and to learn more and to make friends with the people that you meet there. I don't know, it's just a lot of fun. Everybody is just as nervous as you are, and I don't know, it definitely calms me down to know that everybody around me is going through the same thing.
Yeah. You're all nervous together.
Right.
You may even have a long discussion with somebody about what nervous peas are.
A nervous pee.
That's when you have to pee before you go on stage, but when you come off, you don't have to anymore. And it's not because you went on stage, hopefully.
It's phantom pee.
It's phantom peas, yes.
It's phantom pee.
We
hope you didn't pee on the stage, but suddenly you don't have to go anymore when you're off the stage. Where did it go? It's gone. Phantom pee.
Yay, being scared.
I'm not sure why being scared triggers this I have to pee reaction, but
I don't know.
There you go. I think, too, that, like, you know, everybody's going to feel a little bit competitive and wish that they are the ones that win in the end. But the important thing is to remember that everybody in that green room with you wants it just as much and has put just as much into their costume. So it's important not just to be friendly, but to be respectful of that. There's nothing that bothers me more than seeing someone go into a contest certain that they're going to win. There is always a chance someone is going to be better than you. There's always a chance someone's going to make something that you've never seen before. So just go into it to have fun. Go into it with the right mindset.
I go into it to nerd out in the green room.
Exactly. Like, cosplay is for fun. Even if you're doing it competitively, of course you want to win, but make sure that you're still having fun. Like, make sure that, like, you're not killing yourself for this costume and that you're going to, like, throw a fit if you don't win. It's for fun. It is for fun.
And for me, every time that I go into a contest, this is just advice for entering contests in general, I go into it going, I want to push my skills, I want to see how much more I can learn this time or to refine a certain set of skills, but also that green room interaction is what that's what I thrive off of. It's worth the getting up on stage and being scared out of my wits' end. And speaking of stage,
let's talk about going on stage.
Stage is where I am the worst at stage.
I feel like we could do, like, a whole episode on its own just on putting together your stage performance.
Yes.
But just to be concise, like, there are two different types usually of stage performances, and one is called a walk-on and one is a skit. For a walk-on, it's usually just what it sounds like. You're going to walk onto the stage, you're going to do a really quick presentation, maybe a few poses.
Maybe you have 30 to 45 seconds, maybe sometimes a minute, depending on the contest.
Yeah, and then you walk right back off. With something like a skit, it's usually done with groups. It's usually, I always say usually because every contest varies, but it's usually tells a story. Sometimes is comedic, sometimes is dramatic, but it tells a story. I don't know. Yeah. That's really about it.
On that note, so I prefer walk-ons over skits, because I would rather not be on the stage longer than I need to.
Fair.
So the Anime Bonsai contest here in Utah does 45 seconds, and so you can split that up into, like, 15-second chunks where you're doing something different, and I just try to change up what I'm doing every 15 seconds, and then get myself off that stage because I'm scared.
Sure.
And it's just one of the first things, like, for a beginner, if you're a beginner listening to this is my advice for you. Don't walk on the stage and then walk right back off of it.
Please stay and, like, hold.
Show off that costume that you spent however long you spent working on it. Show it off for that little bit of time that you've got up there. And skits are built for more time to tell a story, but try and use that 45 seconds that you have on stage for a walk-on to tell a story.
Sure.
Those are the ones that I actually got performance awards on, and I was like, what? I did that? I was confused because, again, if I told a story, it made things more interesting, it makes things more memorable for the judges.
It does.
Because others are not going, that, I don't remember that one. They're like, oh yeah, the one that did that funny thing on stage, or the one that did that really cute story, or they had really cool chemistry between these two. It gives the judges something, a context to pull from, and as well as, like, showing off to the audience what your character is like. You're obviously dressing up as a character that you love, so show us why you like that character. Reenact a small scene from them, or,
For me, my favorite thing is the skits, and I like to be in skits, and I like to do skits.
I'm glad you do.
Oh, thanks. Because I love to tell stories, and I love to, like, put emotion or humor into my skits. But the one thing I will say with, if you're doing a skit, you don't have to use the whole time. You want your skit to be something that is fun, that gets your point across or tells your story, and then you're done and you can leave the stage. They might give you anywhere from like 1.5 minutes to 5 minutes. You never have to use the whole time. You only have to use the time you need.
Use what you need to tell your story.
Because there can be stories that have a huge amount of impact that are really cool, but because they decided to take the whole amount of time, it makes the skit feel like it drags on, and it becomes really like
overstaying a welcome.
Yeah, exactly. You just want to tell your story and be done. And gosh, what else can I say about skits? You can do that, like, you can do a one-person skit. You can have up to however many the convention decides you can have. I think the biggest I've seen is like 9 or 10 people on stage, which I can't imagine having, like, trying to do all of the...
Always check the rules, by the way, when you're signing up as a group to find out what the max is, because a lot of places don't usually allow 9 or 10.
Yeah, and having worked behind the scenes at conventions, sometimes it seems like, well, of course I can fit more than 6 people on this stage. Why won't they let me have more than 6 people on the stage? A lot of times it's insurance reasons. The convention is only insured to have X amount of people on the stage at one time, and if it goes over that, it violates the terms of their insurance and things like that. So there are usually reasons behind it, so just always ask if you are worried. But yeah, make sure your skit doesn't drag. Make sure that you use the time you have to, like we were saying, tell a story. You can always do like a humorous skit where it's just a series of jokes, but they're going to remember it so much better if it's telling a story.
Just have fun showing off your character. And if you're really, really nervous, like what I used to do was that I made sure I did at least 3 poses on stage and use the whole stage, even for a walk-on. Is that, like, for walk-ons, I would go up, I would start either on the right or the left. I would just make sure that I was taking a long distance walk. I would walk in character, and then I would stop and I would do a pose, some sort of movement, and then I would move to another spot, the middle or the right. I usually try to end in the middle. Yeah. And something really dramatic for that last pose, so that way it's like lasting impression. And it's just poses, and that's just serious poses. I prefer having someone else on stage with me. So a lot of times, as Panna will know, I would drag one of my siblings along with me, and I'd be able to interact with them on stage, and that gave me more to do. I was able to tell sibling props. I did that a lot.
Human props,
and it allowed for me to tell more of a story where and. There's a lot I could go on about that, but if you feel nervous going up by yourself, find someone who'll go up with you, and then you have someone to interact with on stage, and you feel less like everyone's just looking at you. And to me, it's easier to tell a story if you've got 2 people.
Right, exactly. I was looking at my comments, and Anna from Team Germany 2014 actually brought up a really good point. If you guys have a chance to go back and look at those, she was the Cardcaptor Sakura, the woodsy card. It was really cool. But anyway, she said one of the important things to remember on stage is how can you move enough in your costume? especially if you're trying to do something big, elaborate, and crazy, are you going to be able to get on and off that stage? Like, you need to make sure that you've practiced how to move in your costume. So Mercedes' advice of like being able to do it a week in advance is very important.
Very important.
I know for a lot of us, if we aren't going to have the costume done in time, we make our shoes first, so we know that we can move in the shoes.
Yes, that's actually what I did for the Modica skit for Bonsai that one year. Is that I got my shoes ready first, and then I practiced in those, because I had to make sure, because I was wearing heels. I was like, can I actually jump and move around and do a sword fight in these shoes? Turns out, very limited movement. My feet hate them.
That is not something you want to learn on the stage. That is something you want to practice ahead of time.
On that note, too, check out what the stage is going to be like.
Ooh, yes.
There was one year I was practicing, and I was going to do a bunch of, like, front rolls on stage, kind of like a front flip, but lower to the ground because I can't actually do a front flip. But I was gonna do some really fun stuff like that, and got to the convention and was like, oh, the stage is concrete.
Oof.
So I did not do that. Because I didn't want to roll around on that, and, there's, like, hard pieces on the back of my costume that, like, if I just messed up once, that would have hurt. So I did not do that. So knowing what your stage is made up of, knowing how much movement you can put on there, and if you ever have questions, the people who run the contest are always pretty
if
helpful.
your con is nice enough to offer rehearsal time, take advantage of it.
Yes,
even
please.
If it's just walking on and off the stage, so you know if it's slippery, if it's hard, if it bounces, if it's carpeted. That is so important for you to know what the staging is like, and it can really affect your skit.
And it's also very nice to, like, if there's a rehearsal time, to get up there and let yourself have a moment where you're like, okay, it's okay if this one screws up. Anime Los Angeles, we did our practice one. I came off the stage going, oh my gosh, that was crap. It was so bad. Luckily, the actual one went much better.
Yeah, I mean...
But it's good to get that out of your system.
Yeah, and that has happened with Garnet Runestar and I at every single time we've done World Cosplay Summit. Our, like, rehearsal thing has been absolute garbage. Like, props fell apart, costumes tore, one of us, like, tripped and fell, or,
you
like...
guys have freaking dislocated limbs.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. But then it makes it so that the stage performance actually works and everything is fine. So even just getting that nervousness out of your system, having done it once on stage, is kind of like a relief and gets you ready for the final event.
Kind of get an idea of what you're gonna feel up there.
And if your con doesn't offer rehearsals, ask for them. Petition, it's so important.
Yeah, you can always ask, and if enough people have an interest in it, the contest will probably look at it and go, maybe that'll be cool, and they'll do it.
And a lot of times that means waking up garbage early in the morning to do it, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it.
And if they don't have it, you can always go outside and practice. And we found an empty parking lot one year and practiced until we couldn't practice no more.
Yep. I have definitely done rehearsals in parking lots, in hotel rooms, in hotel hallways, in...
Now, fun note, I don't normally practice before I go on stage.
Do you really not?
No.
Mercedes.
No,
Mercedes.
I don't. Usually it's like, I'm like standing there in line, ready, because they called my number. They're like, hey, you're going up next. And I'm like, oh crap, I should figure out what I'm doing.
I think my thing is I have a really hard time. Like, if I'm rehearsing ahead of time, I will make my body go through the motions, but the thing that won't rehearse ever is my face. It just does not want to, like go with the rehearsal thing, so I'll be making stupid faces as I do a serious dramatic skit. But then on stage, I'll be completely, like, stoic in character, but when I'm rehearsing, I just hold
I'm always
faces.
Afraid that on stage I'm gonna pull the dumbest faces. And I have. So yeah.
Make sure also, if you do get the chance to rehearse, or if you're doing something crazy like a fight scene, Lauren Cross on brought up a really important point, and that's to talk to the cosplay coordinators and make sure that if there's anything big that they know about it, like, it's fine to surprise the audience or the judges. Don't surprise the cosplay staff. They need to know if someone's supposed to die in your skit. They need to know if something is supposed to be big and frightening in your skit.
Yeah, because if you're a really dang good actor and you suddenly collapse on stage because your character dies and the staff don't know, that can be really exciting in a not good way.
Yeah, exactly. And also, if you collapse on stage and it wasn't supposed to happen, they
know that they should get up there and help.
Yes, exactly. They need to know to help. So yeah, just make sure that you touch base with your cosplay coordinator if you're doing anything big and crazy, and that's yeah.
So I think the last thing on that is like choosing audio. Some contests will let you pick audio, some don't. Some will let you use licensed music, some do not. And so that, I think, we'll probably save for a whole nother episode.
Yeah,
we're kind of going long here.
Into, and legal reasons for both, and
yes,
whatnot. Should we wrap up with some cosplay horror stories?
Yes, cosplay horror stories.
Yay!
Yeah, you go first. I haven't thought of one yet.
Oh, dang it! I haven't thought of mine either.
Oh, no, okay.
Okay.
Oh, wait, I got one.
Okay.
I got one.
Do it.
This is Anime Bonsai with the Modica skit.
Again?
Yes. Okay, so let's say, this also goes along advice. If you have a set, don't hurt yourself on it.
Oh, no.
So, especially if you have to move around a lot on stage. I was setting up my skit. I was being Sayaka from Madoka Magica, so we were getting ready for this big dramatic skit on stage, and we had these giant panels that would turn and move so that we could reveal, like, have a big reveal on the show and whatnot, or on the show, on the stage. So, what I did is I was putting the PVC pipes together, and PVC pipe sets are awesome, but they also have a tendency to fall apart.
1-inch pipes.
1-inch
pipes. 1-inch pipes.
Yes, they just love to, like, wiggle their way out of things and just fall apart. And so I was making sure that every piece was nice and solid in it. I was like, if it takes forever or is really hard to get out later,
get a rubber mallet.
Yeah, don't do what I did. I would just take the pieces and I would slam them on the ground. Now, mind you, I was tired of wearing the shoes I mentioned earlier, the heels for Sayaka, so I was just in my tights and no shoes on my feet. So I was slamming these pieces on the floor and slam.
No!
And I looked down and realized I smashed my pinky toe.
Oh, no.
And it really, really hurt.
Oh, no.
And so I was like, okay, well, this will be fine. So I just started slamming pieces again, got the whole set put together, walked back, well, not really walked, but kind of limped back to the green room going, this really, really hurts.
Oh,
so I was like, I'll go sit down. It'll probably be fine. I don't think I hit it that hard. And like, and I started joking about it as I was heading back to my seat with a couple friends that I ran into, and I was like, I hit my toe, and they're like, is that why it's bleeding? And I looked down and I was like, oh no! And I couldn't, like, because I was wearing tights, like, and how I was, like, my costume and whatnot went together, I was like, I can't just go quickly go put a Band-Aid on my toe. So I was like, well, and I just put my shoe on. And I was
This is fine!
This is fine! And I just waited until after we did all our stage stuff. I was like, if it starts swelling, my foot is in my shoe.
Oh.
So it won't swell, so I can't put my foot in my shoe. And I don't suggest doing this, by the way.
Oh, no.
And then I, limped on stage and then was like, hey, pretend you don't gotta limp and you gotta jump when she throws something at you. Got it, Kay. And I did the thing. And
I couldn't tell.
I'm glad. I'm really glad you couldn't tell I smashed my toe before going on stage.
Oh, no.
No, it was great. It was only a little scratch, and it had a little bruising afterwards, but there's my cosplay horror story.
So, I'm gonna also talk about stage and rehearsing and the importance of knowing your stage. So, when Garnet Runestar and I did our Code Geass skit for World Cosplay Summit, she's in the background here giggling at me. We had an incident each time we performed it. And, I mean, we had rehearsed it a decent amount, but the first time we actually performed it, we hadn't done it fully, both of us in costume. We had, a lot of props and a lot of things going on the stage, and part of our skit was, like, doing a paso doble dance. So it was a lot. It was a lot. And the first time we did it, I was twirling her and I elbowed her in the face. And luckily she played it off without
Ow!
Yeah.
It was on stage.
It was on stage.
Public.
Yeah, it was not a rehearsal. It was the actual performance, and I elbowed her in the face. And then the other incident was when we didn't win anything for that one, so we took it to a different competition at NonDesCon. The stage there was smaller, and we had rehearsed this scene where Garnet draws the sword from my belt and points it at me after she has spun away. And because of how small the stage was, when she spun away, she didn't get as far, and then she's supposed to brandish it at me as I walk toward her. So because of how small the stage was, she did not walk very far away, and she has to turn and just blindly brandish it at me. And I was also walking toward her, and she turned, pulled the sword out of my belt, and it was literally an inch from my nose. She almost stabbed me in the face. And luckily nothing happened on that one. But that was the importance of knowing the dimensions of your skit. Especially, don't surprise your coordinators and judges with actually bleeding on the stage. It's not a happy time. So those are my whoopsie story.
Whoopsies.
Whoops. Whoops. So that's all for this week. Few things again. If you guys have a horror story you want to share with us, you can send it to us at cosplaystitchandseam@gmail.com.
Or you can come to the website and fill out our form there, or just message us anytime.
Yeah. And a special thanks this week goes out to David Jeffress from Dungeon and Chill podcast. He's our brand new editor for this episode. And so give him a thanks in our comments section, or, go check out Dungeons and Chill. And then just remember for next week, guys, play with scissors for the sheer fun of it. We'll see you later.
Gosh. Podcast updates every Friday in the morning, so come check it out on the blog or via podcast links, Apple Podcast and Stitcher and Google Play. Woo!
Woo!